Washington, D.C. is located in the mid-Atlantic region on the east coast of the United States, inland between Maryland and Virginia and sitting on the Potomac River. The land was originally part of Maryland but is now its own territory, which marks the capital of the United States within this district. The entire city is contained within 68 square miles. The area is in a humid subtropical climate zone, which results in having 4 different seasons throughout the year. Hot and humid summers offset by cold and snowy winters. Springtime would be the most ideal time to visit as temperatures begin to rise in the 70 to 80 degree range.
Besides being our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. has plenty of activities, museums, and monuments that appeal to tourists of all kinds. One of the most popular locations with visitors is the world-famous Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, a sprawling complex packed full of interesting exhibits that the whole family can enjoy. From dinosaur bones and prehistoric tools to strange creatures in a butterfly garden, this museum is worth spending a day to explore. Besides natural history, Washington, D.C. has other museums with exhibits that can pique anyone's interests. The National Museum of African American History, the National Air and Space Museum, the National Museum of American History, and the Spy Museum each have hours of guided tours, exhibits, and attractions that make a D.C. vacation into a learning experience for all ages. If museums aren't your speed, Washington, D.C. also has many important and unique monuments, all within walking distance. The Washington Monument, with its famous elevator to the top, the Lincoln and Jefferson Memorials, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial are all important pilgrimage sites for Americans from all walks of life. Also located nearby and throughout D.C. are solemn memorials for fallen soldiers in each of America's military conflicts. 2 standouts are the Vietnam War Memorial, on which families can find the names of their fallen family members, and the World War II Memorial, which features shrines for the men of all 50 states who gave their lives in service of their country. If visiting memorials and museums gets you down, Washington, D.C. also has exciting, top-of-the-line sports venues for fans of all major American sports, such as Nationals Park, home of the World Series champion Washington Nationals, Capital One Arena, home of the NBA's Wizards and NHL Capitals, and FedEx Field, where the Washington Redskins play and site of huge concerts year-round. Take in an event of your choice and then enjoy D.C.'s outstanding local restaurants and bars with cuisine tailored for every taste. No visit to Washington, D.C. would be complete without tours of the White House, U.S. Capitol Building, House of Representatives, and other essential government buildings. Visitors can see the interior workings of our government and learn more about the processes and people that make the United States the country it is. These experiences, unique to D.C., are valuable for all visitors. In short, Washington, D.C. has attractions for every type of tourist. History, monuments, activities, tours, nightlife, and more make the District of Columbia absolutely packed with things to do. An essential destination for Americans and a great draw for foreign tourism, Washington, D.C. should be at the site of your next trip. The only drawback is you might not have enough time to experience everything.
Discussing the tourist market of Washington, D.C. The tourist market of Washington, D.C. is a little different from a lot of other places you would tour in the U.S. because it is the capital of the U.S. So there's a lot of history to learn because it's the capital. So you would see places like the White House, the Smithsonian Museum, the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, all that. That being said, the purpose of the trip would be to learn history and just to kind of get more in tune with what happened in this country and just learn more. So the socioeconomic status for Washington, D.C. is around middle class. The income potential yearly is about $83K a year for people that live and work there. As far as consideration, I would say backward segmentation and suppressed demand kind of go hand in hand because the amount of locals that live there are being surpassed by the people that tour and work there or travel to work there. So the travel propensity is about 61% leisure traveling and 39% business traveling. And within that statistic, even in business, you're still going to be learning a bunch of stuff historically, so it turns into somewhat of a leisure trip, but you're there for work. it is the money-making capital too, than like New York. As far as that goes, in an article according to NBC in 2018, there were about 22 million visits to the capital, and those tourists spent close to 7.8 billion and generated about 851 million in taxes. So the tourists just bring a lot of money in and out of the capital, so that keeps things going, so they can keep things nice, and that just brings more attractions to the tourists. So the history behind the capital is what gains the tourist market more for Washington, D.C.
Now we're going to cover transportation in the Washington, D.C. area. There are 3 airports, with Baltimore and D.C. close together. To connect, the biggest part of their transportation is their vast metro system, plus they don't really drive taxis very often. The expansive network of tunnels connect all 4 quadrants of D.C. and Virginia and Maryland, and the system is heavily used by commuters, plus is a very popular way to get around D.C. The metro consists of 6 color-coded lines, and popular sightseeing stops such as the Smithsonian, Woodley Park Zoo, and Chinatown are all accessible from the trains. Fares are calculated by how many stops you travel and vary during peak and off-peak hours. During peak hours, the range is $2.25 to $6 per trip, and during off-peak hours, it is $1.25 to $3.85. Thank you.
The social, environmental, and economical impact of tourism in Washington, D.C. So on average, 22 million people visit Washington, D.C. a year, and over 54 million visit all the national parks. This benefits a lot of the nation's capital by supplying nearly 329,000 jobs nationally. The economy in D.C. receives a benefit of $40.1 billion, and the amount of minimum wage jobs supplied through the District of Columbia is out of this world. And thanks to all the monuments across the U.S. also. Although with all the tourism does come some negative effects with the environment, and just about 99,000 tons of trash is picked up daily in D.C., not mentioning what portion can end up in the sewers and eventually make its way to the ocean. In 2015, Washington, D.C. started a waste management program in an effort to keep the streets clean, and however, with a lot of the funds made yearly by the parks, a lot of the money today is going towards preserving the parks and cleaning the parks and their natural environment. And so they're also taking some of that money and using it towards the District of Columbia's national monuments and whatnot. So the national monuments are all around the U.S., so applying these laws can really help tourism in the future for Washington, D.C. and other regions of the United States.
For our exam questions, number 1, Washington, D.C. has made a thorough resolution to tourism waste management. A, true, B, false. The answer is A, true. Number 2, Washington, D.C. has the most confined national monuments in the United States. A, true, B, false. The answer is A, true. And finally, number 3, D.C.'s government on occasions plays a role in the national landmarks and monuments. True or false? Answer is A, true.